What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 6 of 45 Minutes of Noise, part of the Noise Podcast Network. I'm your host, your boy, Chris Pugh, and as ever, I'm joined by my very good friend and Mr. Cynical himself, Samuel Lewis. I say as ever, Sam, that's actually not true. The last two episodes you hosted. Thank you for that. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. Had a good few albums. It was good to have Jack on there, to talk through some of the stuff that we ended up talking about. I had a good time. Missed you though.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job, man. I was really impressed. By the sounds of it, dude, I need to listen to the new Zealand album.
Yeah, you really do. It's terrific. It's terrific. Yeah. It was they're traditionally a avant-garde kind of band anyway, so we're not
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
talking about a band that's like where it's surprising that they've taken risks and done something really interesting. But they've
Mm.
taken some risks and done something really interesting. So I think you should listen to it. It's an early front. Well, early, I nearly said early, as if it's not September. But it's a front runner for me for album of the year.
I saw them support Meshuggah in May of 2022, I think it was, and the crowd gave them the best response I've ever seen a crowd give for a support band. Like
Wow.
the crowd were like raptured by them, me included. Like it was they were really great, man. It was sick. Like one of the guys I was with, Aaron, he was like, this band are amazing. I need to listen to every single thing they've done. You know, Aaron, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like and they were sick, man. They absolutely smashed it. So you know what? I'm kind of annoyed at myself for not listening to it sooner. But if you were the one person who was wondering where Chris has been, I was traveling across Thailand, Australia, and Singapore for the summer, and I got back on the 2nd of September, and it's taken me 17 days to feel like a human being again. Hence my return. Recording this on the 19th to be released on the following Tuesday. We should tell you who we are first, in case you are unfamiliar. 45 minutes of noise. We try to cram 45 minutes of average music discussion in the average time it takes to listen to an album. The best way to support us is by following us on Twitter, slash subscribing to us on YouTube, or following slash liking whichever service you use to listen to your podcast. We are available on all of them, be it YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Me and Sam will be there. You could also follow us on Twitter at Noise UK and follow the general podcast handle at Noise Podcast Network. Final thing to mention before we get going, big shout out to our friends Liquid Death, the Murderers of Thirst. Unbelievably tasting water here. What flavour you got there, bro? I'm on the old severed lime here.
Oh, I love that one. I ran ahead to that one. I've got a mango
Is that a
chainsaw.
mango? Yeah, yeah. Honestly, mate, the severed lime. Unbelievable, this.
Yeah, it's class. Put it with some squash. So like
Squash.
blackcurrant, apple and blackcurrant in
Yeah.
a pint glass, and then fill the rest of it up with a severed lime. Trust me.
Wow. I tell you what, if you got nothing else from this podcast, you know what to do with your Liquid Death now.
Goes well with vodka as well, because it's basically like lime flavored tonic.
Ah, Vode. You have
Mm.
been experimenting. No wonder your severed lime's gone. Chucking it in every vodka drink you've had for the last 3 months.
Yeah, I've been living like James Bond during August. Yeah.
We're going to start off with some news. Interesting this actually. Do you know what? This is the first episode that we've done of a podcast for like ages where I felt like there's actually like real like newsworthy stories to talk about, and I haven't to have to really like sift through the news that's been going on and trying to find something and shoehorn it into a news section. So I'm reading this from Metal Injection's website. Paratrip fans are pissed about the band opening for Pantera. So, Pantera recently announced that Paratrip were the openers for the upcoming 2025 European tour dates. If we could just think about that sentence in isolation, Sam, and pretend we're living in a perfect world where everyone's a nice person. Paratrip opening for Pantera. It's nice, isn't it? If we're in a perfect world where everyone's nice, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
for
the
a perfect
one you
world,
want.
everyone's nice and alive. Yes.
It's
Yeah, big fan.
yeah, it's so unfortunate that this is the scenario that the announcement has been received in. Basically, so it's not just the fact of Phil Anselmo's controversial comments and behaviour at Dying Bash 2016. The anger of Paratrip fans actually stems from primarily comments that were made by late Paratrip vocalist, sorry, Riley Gale. He did two separate interviews regarding Pantera and Superjoint Ritual. This was in regards to them having the possibility of supporting on tours for both of those bands. I'm just going to read something from one of the interviews that Riley said, and then myself and you will try and like kind of pull apart really where we both stand with this. Uh, Riley Gale was asked about whether he would ever join a tour with Superjoint Ritual, another band vocalized by Phil Anselmo, or Pantera. Riley Gale's response here, quote, "We already did. Superjoint Ritual asked us to go out. It was hard, but you know what? It was one of those things where you know it was only a year ago, this is obviously in 2017, since Phil got busted Sieg Heiling on camera. And one of the guys from Pig Destroyer, I believe it was Blake, he plays in the band with Phil, and he was there, and he kind of explained what Phil was doing was actually being sarcastic. He was trying to address the hecklers. I'm not sure about that, Blake, to be honest. But you know what? He's done some stuff that made us too uncomfortable. And I didn't want to go out there and feel like I need to be the guardian for Phil Anselmo regarding his politics. And I certainly didn't want to come out there and end up disagreeing and then being on tour with a band that hates us for our politics over the next few months. It was a really hard thing to turn down. I would love to see what Phil really is like as a person. So I think that quote there, Sam, is kind of interesting because Riley Gale does give kind of scope for wanting to know what Phil is actually like in real life, as opposed to a 15-second camera shot that was taken of him at a dime bash. But the problem is that 15-second camera shot was of him sea holding and saying white power. What are your immediate thoughts on this? You kind of messaged me a surprisingly cynical response when I asked you about it a couple of days ago. But in general, what are your thoughts on this power trip? Going on support of a band that not only the vocalist has made racist comments in the past, but also the former vocalist of Power Trip that passed away said he wouldn't want to go on tour with Phil Anselmo. I just feel like the waters are unbelievably muddy here.
Um, yeah, I think I think we're in a world where it's getting harder and harder to separate the artist from the actions that you disagree with. And we're about to talk later about a situation where an artist has had something distasteful happen in his personal life, and we're probably going to say something like, that's separate. That's got nothing to do with his music. Treat him as an artist. But it's hard to do that in every single case. Um, I'm sorry, I don't buy that Phil Anselmo was doing what he did out of sarcastic irony, trying to mock a heckler by
Yeah, nah.
shouting white power and doing a Zeke Heil. It just wasn't the appropriate context for that kind of remark. I don't really think Phil Anselmo is capable of that kind of satire, and I've certainly not taken any moral pinch points from anyone in a band called Pig Destroyer. I'm sorry. But secondarily to that, um, uh, the members of Power Trip should be ashamed of themselves. Because is it not enough that you've replaced your dying vocalist with somebody else and that you're using the previous music to sell records and go out and reignite the band, that you're also ignoring something he expressed discomfort about to align yourself with this band? It just feels another example of a band putting aside moral difficulties for a greater purpose, and that greater purpose is often financial. Does that imply then that Riley Gale was the only person expressing discomfort at playing with this band 6 or 7 years ago, and now he has passed away, the other band are like, cool, I guess that doesn't matter anymore, as if the band's fans wouldn't sort of rise
Yeah.
up against that? I think it raises some difficult questions about the nature of the others. Um, I agree in the general sense that we shouldn't let political affiliations always impact the way that the bands feel about each other. But I think it's perfectly okay to say I'm not comfortable touring with a band where that takes place. I'm usually pro, like, we're overreacting in this circumstance. I'm usually on that side of the debate, but I don't think that's the case in this one. And the fact that they're touring with it now in the concert in the sort of following the situation just doesn't feel good, Chris. It just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, see, I've been trying. I think the natural response. I love Power Trip, and honestly, the music with Riley Gale. I'm so glad that me and you saw Power Trip before Riley's tragic passing, and I really felt like they were pretty much the only going to be the big like headline thrash band of the 2010s, and it's just such a horrendous tragedy that Riley Gale is no longer with us. But I think the natural reaction was, how could they do this? And then I tried to just be devil's advocate for the purpose of not only interesting conversation, but also just trying to not respond so naturally and emotionally to things. So I thought, right, everyone's got, if it's like this kind of metaphor, everyone's got their own kind of moral Rubicon, aren't they? And they decide what actions pass that Rubicon that can no longer be forgiven and there's no going back. Really just don't see how this isn't one of them. Because, like, me and you had an interesting conversation before, and we said, in fact, no, you said to me, I was talking about like some of the way that I thought Pantera might perceive certain things that happened in the 21st century, and you said the reality is, Chris, that during the Black Lives Matter protest, Pantera, there's a decent chance some of the members would be sharing like police flags, and they'd be sharing "Make America Great Again" stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Dimebag had a Confederate flag as a guitar.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I remember seeing that picture and thinking, "Geez, man."
It was he had it as he has it a tattoo on his arm. We're not, but I'm also reminded of the famous Bill Burr skit about the duck hunter when they were talking about the duck hunter and he said something homophobic and he said it was obviously not a very nice thing that he said, but this is a guy that hunts ducks in a Louisiana swamp. What did you think he thought? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, did
Yeah,
he have
yeah,
like, do you think
yeah,
he had some like progressive liberal ideas that he was hiding under his hair? Like, you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like the guy hunts ducks in a forest, but I don't necessarily care what Pantera as politics was in 1992 necessarily. They joined the 1991 Moscow show in the general guise of fighting against liberality and sort of rock against racism and all that type of stuff that happened to the late 80s and early 90s. But that's much more conjecture and speculation than this. This is cut and dry. Um, he did a Nazi salute. He didn't really apologize for it, not properly anyway. Um, he's him and his band have since stapled together a version of Pantera in an obvious attempt to sell tickets and sort of reclaim a sense of nostalgia, right? And now they're employing another band who have stapled together themselves after a passing of a member who also apparently no longer care about this type of thing. It seems they suit each other, but I don't have to be okay with it. And I don't
yeah.
think anybody else does either.
I remember when me and myself and you we were going to be at a download, and there was a rumor that Phil Anselmo's version of Pantera was going to be there, and or was it Bloodstock? I can't remember. It's one of the two. Anyway, I was like, I wouldn't feel all right about it, and you were like, I wouldn't feel all right about it. I was like, great, okay, I'm glad we agree. So I haven't got to have an awkward conversation with, oh yeah, you want to go? I don't really want to go. Um,
No, I disagree with their way into the Pantera story. Phil Anselmo's drug use and violent mood swings and general unprofessionalism was one of the biggest contributory factors of Pantera breaking up. I really don't like the idea that he's now benefiting from the nostalgia of a band that he was responsible for ending, or at least largely responsible for ending, in my view.
Okay, just as we close off this news story, because I think that sometimes we get like overly swelled, not me and you, I'm talking about we as a society, we get overly swelled into our own viewpoint and the viewpoint of the 300 people that you saw reply to a post on Twitter. And we actually forget that, yeah, the reality is large swathes of the population either think that Phil made a mistake, I'll still pay my money, or maybe don't even know. You know what I mean? Like, there are large swathes of the population that might not even really know Phil Anselmo's political view. So let me ask you this: considering the money that Paratrip are probably going to be paid to go on the tour, I'm not sure how much profit they'll make, but let's say there'll be t-shirt sales and they're going to be playing in front of Pantera audience who musically, if they've not heard Paratrip before, they're going to like them. Let's be honest. Musically, Paratrip are a phenomenal band. This is going to be good for Paratrip. Gun to your head in the long term.
Yeah, yeah. Money lasts longer than anger, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Right, we'll see how that plays out. Let's move on. So, Can I ask how closely you followed the Linkin Park stuff that's been going on lately?
Through the lenses of Jack. So I kind of he sent me updates and things, but I wasn't like seeking it out.
Yeah, so obviously Linkin Park new vocalist name's Emily Armstrong, and I wish that's where the I wish that's where the story ended. To be honest, out of interest, Sam, did you listen to? Let's talk about musically first, and because that's literally what we're here to do. Let's talk about musically first, and then we'll break into the final points of the discussion. Musically, did you listen to the new song?
Yeah, bits of it. I liked it.
It was fine, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah.
I
She has a good
feel,
voice. I can see the
yeah,
choice.
yep, she's talented. I can I feel like that's a natural progression for where Linkin Park were prior to the, horrendous obviously passing of Chester. I feel like this song The Emptiness Machine, it's not too far a cry from Linkin Park in 2015, really.
No, 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 no. I think I agree with that.
With that, I also should follow up that I don't feel like Linkin Park did anything great post Meteora, and I they did some great songs, but I don't feel like there was a very good album post Meteora, and I kind of struggled with Linkin Park's output since Meteora. And but just before, honestly, this is absurd. This is just before we started talking about the final points of this. Do you know? Obviously, I went onto Linkin Park Spotify into the new song, and okay, obviously this will account for some people listening multiple, possibly hundreds of thousands of times. But if we just look at the numbers in isolation, Numb on Spotify, it's got 1.8 billion listens. And in the end, it's got 2.1 billion listens. Now, again, obviously, since people listen multiple times over. But if you look at those numbers in isolation, half the planet has heard those two songs. I'm willing to bet that half the planet doesn't know what Gibraltar is. Do you know what I mean? Like they're doing better than Gibraltar. Do you
Yeah.
mean it's insane? Like that is astronomical, isn't it? That
Yeah, it's like the entire population of Russia, isn't it? At least.
three what 3.5 billion? Yeah, that and then so it's
No, oh sorry,
three
sorry. I was
Chinas.
referring to yeah, I was referring to like 1.8 billion just on its own. Like the two actually 2 billion people live in China, don't they? That is
It's
insane.
insane. It's honestly, I know that again. I'm going to say it again. Multiple people have listened multiple times, which obviously skews the figure. So it's not literally 4 billion individual people, but just in isolation, I think that is the most ridiculous number. Obviously, probably Kendrick and Drake and Post Malone and Taylor Swift might also be hitting those numbers.
Yeah.
But for an alternative band, I think that is astounding. That number.
Yeah, I would agree. There was a point in time when Linkin Park were just ubiquitous, though, weren't they? They were just humongous.
Obviously. So let's talk about this. So the reason why the controversy around the new vocalist started is because of potential ties to a actor called Danny Masterson and her potential ties to Scientology. So her name's Emily Armstrong, formerly of a band called Dead Sarah. Although I'm not even going to pretend I listened to them, I wasn't familiar with that band at all. So I formed a band called Dead Sarah. So the accusations really against Emily Armstrong was that I believe, I'm not sure whether Jack could be able to correct me on this in terms of his greater understanding. I believe that she appeared to as a defendant or someone as a witness or character witness or something along those lines for Danny Masterson in a rape trial that he was convicted of and sentenced to 30 years in prison. However, it is important to add now that Emily Armstrong, once these kind of comments were being kind of thrown at Linkin Park as soon as she's announced as the vocalist, she wrote this Instagram story. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm new to so many of you, and I wanted to clear the air about something that happened a while back. Several years ago, I was asked to support someone I considered a friend at a court appearance and went to one early hearing as an observer. Oh, there we go. Went to one early hearing as an observer. Soon after, I realised I shouldn't have. I always tried to see the good in people and I misjudged him. I have never spoken with him since. Unimaginable details emerged and he was later found guilty. To say it as clearly as possible, I do not condone abuse or violence against women and I empathise with the victims of these crimes. For me, um, person massively misjudged other person's character, and unless we have any evidence to the contrary, I would just take it as okay, you're a bit foolish to support his character, what like without really knowing a lot about him, and you've ended up with egg on your face. Unless there's evidence out there to the contrary of that. Like for me, I don't know how long ago this was. She was younger, foolish, like supported someone she shouldn't have supported without really knowing the finer details. Ended up with egg on the face. If there's more evidence out there to the contrary of that, where she knew what he was being charged of, and she had some kind of already kind of implicit or maybe even explicit ideas of what he was up to, then I retract. But that's my knowledge of the situation as we speak.
I don't see an issue with this. Like you made a decision to support a friend. Details emerged. You changed your mind. What I do, like what are we litigating here? That because she's in Linkin Park now, she is never allowed to have made a misstep in her entire life.
Yeah.
Like what's the version of this? And then she went to a hearing, and then the details came out, and then we didn't. As if that's not the point of the court of justice. Like, does that mean that every person who was on the jury who didn't know who this man was and then eventually found out who this man was and then convicted him also shouldn't be in Linkin Park? It's an absurd idea that this woman is being dragged over the coals for attending a hearing as an observer to someone she considered a friend, and then when she found out new information, she changed her mind. That's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. Otherwise, every person that's ever committed a crime, we'd arrest their husband or wife as well, wouldn't we? It's insane.
So yeah, I'm glad we see eye to eye on that, and unless any evidence comes out to the contrary,
Yeah, well,
I'm
that goes
entirely
without
with you.
saying. Like, as things stand right now, that's the decision she made, and she can live by that. That's fine.
So the next part of this is where is where there's more to unpick because she has
Oh
links
no.
to she has links to Scientology.
Right.
Uh, right. So this it gets a bit complicated now. So her parents, I believe, were like founding members or at least a key role in the Church of Scientology. And there's literally an image which I'm looking at right now on BBC's website of her attending a Scientology gala event in 2013. Now, obviously Scientology, I'm not going to go over what Scientology is on the podcast for goodness sake. If you're not sure, you can Google it, like, and look it up. But one of the things that is important to point out about Scientology is that my understanding is that they don't believe in mental health, or they don't believe in the concept of like depression or anxiety. That would be a problem if she is a Scientologist or a Scientology church member, obviously considering the tragic passing of Chester Bennington. This way gets even more complicated now. Um, they also I believe Scientologists are quite have kind of strong views on homosexuality and pretty much cross over into homophobia. But Emily Armstrong identifies as queer, and she wrote songs for Dead Sarah that very much criticised religious attitudes to sexuality. There's a 2018 song called "Heaven's Got a Back Door." I'm reading the vocalist now from Pretty BC's website. Quote: "I heard the voice of the preacher telling me all the reasons why I die alone. I'm through feeling sorry for the things that I can't choose." So she hasn't actually mentioned anything to do with Scientology. She hasn't acknowledged that she was once a member. She hasn't acknowledged that she's not a member. She hasn't criticized Scientology. She's literally staying quiet on this. Puts us in a difficult position here, does it? Because those lyrics very much suggest that she isn't a member, and this picture of her at a gala event in 2013 is her attending maybe like with her family and like with mum and dad. And as she gets older, as we all do, we become more intelligent, have wider perspectives, and that then influences our new rationale. Sam, after everything I've just said, is this just the internet finding reasons to be annoyed?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Would we say the same if she was Catholic?
Yep, that's a good point. Yep.
Because I'm pretty sure they're not fond of homosexuals. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure the Pope gave a speech once where he said that the best cure against HIV was abstinence rather than the condoms or prevention. But I don't see Catholics being sworn off from joining bands. She joined if her parents were founding members of Scientology. She didn't pick that either.
Yeah,
If
which
she
I'm not
gets
sure of, by the way. I just know they were members.
okay, then if she was taken to a gala in 2013, how old is she now, Chris? Do you have that information? I can find out now, but if you know it off the top of your head.
Looks like she's in the 30s. Sorry,
Okay,
Emily,
so
if you're
20,
not.
yeah, it's all right. Linkin Park, new vocalist age. If she is yeah, she's 38. All right,
Oh, right,
so
right, right. Okay, yeah, 30. Yeah. So this is 11 years ago. So when she was
so
27.
she, when she was 27, so she's old enough to have made like an informed decision.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know the context of that. I think if she's I can't believe we're in a situation where where we have to like parse the lyrics of this woman's previous band's songs to judge if she's appropriate to join a band, where the members of the band whose frontman killed himself because of mental health issues, they accepted her. I'm sorry, what's our issue exactly?
Yeah.
That the internet knows more about this and has a better say than Mike Shinoda.
I
Like,
think it's more
what are
so
we
the
talking
idea
about
that
here?
I think it's more so the idea that Scientologists don't believe in mental health and depression, anxiety, which would obviously be a problem,
So do
wouldn't it?
most people's grandparents, Chris.
Yeah,
Like,
but
like
if you're replacing Chester Bennington in Linkin Park and you're a Scientologist and you don't believe in depression and anxiety, like bro, come on.
I,
I'm not saying this is her. I'm just saying if she's a Scientologist, she's like, oh, depression doesn't exist. That would be a problem, man. That would
yes,
be a
and if she feels like that, that would be a problem. But I've got to imagine that that's come up in the conversations,
surely. Come on.
right? Like
Surely Mike Shinoda
we
is asking her that question.
we've noticed you've been involved in this. Someone's agent would have brought it up, or some PR person, or some whatever HR rep whose job it is to look through all this sort of stuff. We've noticed this. What are your thoughts? Oh well, actually, I feel like this. I went to this thing, and I share some of the beliefs in column A, but I don't share some of the beliefs in column B. Like we've been able to separate religion with certain facets of that faith having things we don't agree with for thousands and thousands of years. There are people that are Islam that say, I agree with this part of our faith, but I don't agree with this application. I don't agree with this interpretation of Muhammad's words. I don't agree with this one. There are people that read the Bible that say, I believe exactly every word as it was written. And some people are Christians and say, I believe in a more holistic, modern interpretation approach. Some people are evolutionists that believe that God literally created the world in 7 days. Some people believe in God, but don't believe that and believe their own version where there's a life and a creator. Are we telling them we can accept all of these things, but just because this girl's going to be singing in the end a couple of times a week, all of a sudden she's not allowed her own personal opinion? I'm sorry, but we're in a world at the moment where metal pats itself on the back for being as inclusive as possible and accepting as possible. But the moment you're from a group or have history with a faith that we don't necessarily agree with, all of a sudden that's a reason to not include you. It seems contrary to the spirit of which this whole movement was sort of put about. If the band are happy with it, then so am I. I I can't see any other decision on the matter, really.
Interesting. Do you know what? Like, I'll be really fascinated to see how the live tours are attended, how the inevitable album performs, because it it's almost done like the worst thing it could have possibly done because it's made Linkin Park's comeback about something other than the music. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's unfortunate because Linkin Park have returned for the first time. I forgot when the last album came out, 2016 maybe. Like Linkin Park
yeah.
have returned for the first time since 2016. It's been 8 years, and the first thing we're talking about is the potential religious beliefs of the new vocalists as opposed to our excitement levels of what's to come. Which it's unfortunate. But I think this is going to be one of those things where when the smoke blows over and everyone just kind of forgets about it. If the follow-up singles are good and the album's good and the live shows are well attended,
But doesn't
then
that prove the point how flimsy this is to begin with then?
oh yeah, totally. I just wanted to bring it up
If
just
a good
just out
album
of
wipes this
interest.
away, like, do you know what I mean? Who was the vocalist? Was it the vocalist of not the vocalist? Was it a member of Deftones that we were talking about a couple of years ago? He was like, I just don't believe that the world isn't round,
Oh,
or I don't
Steph
believe in the moon.
Christensen. Steph
Just
Christensen. Yeah,
don't
yeah, he's
believe
a
in
flat
the
earther.
yeah, yeah. And like, okay, so maybe don't have a beer with him. That doesn't make his
Yeah,
riffs worse.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if this like you look at James Hetfield, his parents were Christian scientists, so they didn't believe in surgery. So he was sent to a different school, and there was a girl with like a broken arm, and it was all mangled, and they were like praying for it to get better and stuff. Like that must have messed him up, but that doesn't mean that James Hetfield doesn't have a role in music because his parents were part of a weird Christian cult that had weird beliefs or beliefs that juxtapose the way our modern society is. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Just out of interest, one final question before we get to album reviews. Where would Linkin Park play at Download now? What position?
They wouldn't headline with the
They
new
ain't headlining
vocalists.
now, but I'm curious. They ain't headlining, but where do you
It'd
think?
be
Do they play third on the main stage?
yeah, maybe your
Or
headline
do
the
they headline a
second.
second?
Or
Interesting.
they do like the secret show thing and do like a
Yeah.
tent and just sort of test the waters.
I'd be dead curious to speak to Andy Coppin and say, where would you position Linkin Park now? So curious. I'd love to hear his response.
Well, yeah, I think headline in the second. I wouldn't put them on the main stage personally because you're unsure if that girl's voice will translate yet. But yeah, yeah, I think I'd see him in the tent first and just see how the crack is. But I mean, like, do you have they released any schedule of the kind of venues they're looking to play in?
Not to my knowledge, there hasn't been any kind of tour announcement unless I've
Hmm.
missed it.
Well, then
Um,
that'll be a good
yeah, yeah.
indicator.
If they're playing arenas and selling them out, you better believe they could still headline download. But if it's 5,000 to 10,000 cap venues and there's only a few sellouts, then maybe that would imply second stage
Mm.
headline
Mike
or
Shinoda on his
sub
own was
headline.
main stage at Reading and Leeds. It
He
was during the
was, but he
day.
didn't headline. Yeah, it was during the day. So Mark, yeah. So it's worth mentioning that. I think he was like the 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. act. So completely respectable position, and he pulled a big
Mhm.
crowd. But yeah, that is worth bearing in mind. Right then, let's get to album reviews. We are going to start with the Black Dahlia Murders Servitude. It's out on September 27th via Metal Blade Records. It's the band's 10th full-length album and the follow-up to 2020's Verminous. I'm going to do my best to not make this album review about the horrible passing of former vocalist Trev. However, just to start, I do want to say this. The Black Dahlia Murders mark had very much been made on 21st century death metal. And if they would have decided to call it a day post Trevor's passing, I would have completely understood. They really have been. They were the fans band, man. Like the Black Dahlia Murder. There was one of those bands where it was so difficult to if you like death metal, it was almost impossible to find a reason to dislike them. I actually interviewed Trev once, and he was the nicest, greatest dude. Like honestly, it was just such a horrible news story when it broke. And I don't feel like anyone can ever really replace Trevor's rasp-like vocals. But I want to add this before we start talking specifically about songs. I'm really glad that they kept the hiring of the replacement vocalist in-house because I'm unsure of who could have done a better job than Brian on this album because he's excellent throughout.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and it maintains the feeling of a Black Dahlia murder
It does.
record by doing that. It doesn't feel like out of place in comparison to the previous records.
I feel, Sam, I feel like this is up there with some of the. I mean, I've got to be careful here. I'm not a Black Dahlia murder aficionado. Like, of the 10 records, I've probably heard three. Verminous being one of them, Nightbringers being the other.
Nocturnal's great as well.
Oh my God, Nocturnal, yeah. So Nocturnal, Night. So I've heard four then. Nocturnal, Servitude, this, Nightbringers, and Verminous. I think this swings punches with them. This is a really good death metal record, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's really, really great. It's really, really great, and it's just as good as the last Carcass record. It's just as good as the
Mm,
last At the Gates record.
mm.
It's just as good as the last Cannibal Corpse record. It's probably a little bit better than the last Cannibal Corpse record for me, actually. But I really like this. Obviously, I echo your sentiments on Trev, and that's a tremendous loss to the band, and probably more of an emotional weight on the fans. Hey, but the rest of them can still fucking play, man. Jesus Christ,
Yeah. Yeah.
this band just could just turn up on the studio and just knock out a 7 to 8 out of 10 death metal record without really thinking about it, and I've really thought about it, so I'm thinking this is like a nine. Um, I don't understand what you'd think, what you'd listen to and think was missing from a death metal standpoint here. It really plays all the hits from a death metal blueprint standpoint. Sneaking riffs, check. Big groove, check. Great solo sound, check. Tempo change, check. Theatrical flourishes and finishes, check. Marching drum breakdowns, check. Guttural punches from the vocals mixed in with the sort of high pitched cascading vocals that we love from sort of the black metal, death metal sort of crossover sort of stuff that we end up getting. Check. It's got everything. It really has got everything. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Love that.
Yeah, nice.
Ollie,
36 quick minutes here.
yeah, would not only one song over 4 minutes, and that's literally a 4 minute song. Right at the conclusion, trans comic blueprint. Drums are great, guitars are great, solos are well structured. It rides the connection, sort of crosses the bridge really nicely between grandiose and brutal. It splits between those things really nicely. I think the songwriting is really tight and polished. I really like this. It's a really good album.
Acoustic intro on Evening Ephemeral. I was not
Yeah,
expecting to open the album with an acoustic intro. It's sick though, isn't it?
it
Um,
really is.
because there's this kind of from the acoustic intro, there's this like really perfect call that transitions into the first growl. Mate, the drumming on this album
Perfect.
is so great. There's these unrelenting double kicks on the chorus interspersed with like some really nice tom work. The drummer's Brandon Ellis. He's done an absurd job. Sorry, Alan Cassidy, sorry, is the drummer. Brandon Ellis is the lead guitarist. There's a song on this album now called Curse Creator. Honestly, everything you loved about Black Dahlia Murder going into this album is like present. There's this kind of like wretched, like dirty vocal that runs through the track. Big thumping bass line, quick stabs on the lead guitar. There's like a real like pace and snap to it. The lead guitar solo that breaks out of the middle of this song is a joke. It's almost unfair how good it is. And then it's something that I'd have to re-listen to the Black Dahlia Murder back catalogue to pick out if I can find it anywhere else. But they did something on it that I've not really heard them do before, unless I just completely forgot something. They use this like really understated little build that it's kind of hard to notice happening until it explodes in this like into this like really climactic denouement. Absolutely like outstanding stuff. I think Mammoth's Hand might be the best track on the album. That's a single, so I won't go too far into the detail there because people probably already heard it. But there's a real like melodious tonality to Mammoth's Hand, particularly in the chorus, which I really liked. And you mentioned a Transcosmic Blueprint. It's got these really dark growls from Brian that are really something to behold. They're like it's almost like discomforting and like a harsh thing to listen to. Another huge solo that bends back into a blood beating verse. Utopia Black. It's got those stabbing clean riffs bursting through the intro. There's a moment as well, like later on, where they use the stabbing clean as like a motif, and they use Brian's vocals in between the stabs. So sick. This is a really good death metal album, man. Like they, they didn't have to do this. Like I told you, what I mean, like this just
Yeah.
wasn't like they. I really would have understood if they left it where they did. And the greatest compliment I can give this album is that album 10 and the first without Trevor, yeah, I think that's correct. The first without Trevor, they have released a record that really swings punches. It's not, obviously Nocturnal is their GOAT record. I don't think anyone's ever going to dispute that. But it's up there defending itself and swinging punches with the rest of the classic Black Dahlia Murder records, like maybe Miasma and Nightbringers.
Yeah, I think this is great. You listen to a certain Dominion, just amazing opening following the intermission. Powerful, bludgeoning, the great chorus riff, tempo change, which actually caught me off guard a little bit. It's a little off kilter, I felt at first, but I actually enjoyed how jarring it was. The solo again, just fantastic. With that groove change underneath, just awesome. I like the change in tempo to really that sludging stuff on Mammoth's Hand. Clearly deliberate to reflect the sort of metaphor of the title. Like the nice little like, sort of classic trill at the start and the sort of for the opening for that really building title lends itself. It feels heavy and weighty. I thought let's talk about the drummer, the little ride work in between sort of the riffs as he follows, the little tonality changes when he accents the riffs just a little bit to give it that sort of fresh feel and sort of give it that unique quality on every song was really, really impressive. I've got nothing negative to say about this. Because you could make the age old, well, they follow the same sort of blueprint and whatever, but it's 36 minutes long and it's death metal and it's Black Dahlia murder, so just like shut up and just listen to something else if you don't like this type of music, because if you do like this type of music, then you will love this album. This is really, 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 really good, and it's really great to hear that they're back, just a legendary band. um and this is just reaffirming their quality, even in the passing of Trev. So I think this is just a great album. I'm so impressed with this.
If you're a Black Dahlia Murder fan, you are about to receive the best possible case scenario, and that's the greatest thing I could say about this album. The
Yeah,
best case
well
scenario
said.
post Trevor is about to happen. Right, let's move on to what's going to close off the show. Unto Others, Neverland. It is by the time this episode is released, it's going to be out now via Century Media Records. It's the band's third full-length album and the follow-up to 2021's Strength. Right. So when I was thinking about the records that we should cover, I remember looking through the list and I looked at Unto Others and I was like, oh, Unto Others, they're one of those bands that I've seen on people like kind of frothing at the mouth over on Twitter, and then like you sometimes there's just not enough time in the day, is there, or month or year. So you're like, oh, I'll listen to that band one day. People seem to really enjoy them, and then they go to the back of your mind. You move on with your life and you completely forget. But when I look through this, I was like, oh, Unto Others, they're the band that like Twitter like really seemed to be exploding about at one point. So do you know what? Why not go for that one? Um, and the second it started playing, I remember I flashed back to a moment between myself and you. And it was when this sounds like a really weird thing to say, but just stick with me. We were watching Spanish love songs, support the Menzingers, and I already really like Spanish love songs. And I turned to you and I said, "What do you think?" And you were like, "I don't like the vocals." And I was like, "Yeah, that's going to be a problem," because the vocals of Spanish love songs are just such a key, central part to the music. And I feel like that is very much the case for Unto Others as well. If you aren't on board with Gabriel Franco's vocals, this is going to be difficult for you, because there's phenomenal musicianship across this entire album, but Gabriel is so central to the sound of it. So let me start with this question first, Sam. Did you like the vocals?
Thought they were pretty good.
Pretty good. Right, okay, I'll take that. So in that case, then I feel like that then expands into something wider on your general thoughts of the record. Can I just say I think this record's excellent, but I'll pass over to yourself.
I love this album.
Mate, how good's this?
It's
This
so
album's
good.
so good. Mate, I was like,
Brilliant.
this is amazing. Honestly, I was listening to this. I was listening to this album and I remember like listening to the first song, which is a single, I believe, called Butterfly. And
Yeah.
the first like minute, I was like, oh, this okay, this is at least gonna be an interesting album. And by the time it got to the 3 minute mark, I was like, oh, actually, this is going to be really, really good. And with the exception of a couple of songs that I could do without, this
Mm.
album is great. Like, really good, this album.
Yeah, this is terrific. Like this has really surprised me. Um, the first time I heard this, I was like, for fuck's sake, Chris. Because I was like, he's
Really?
picked, yeah, because I was like, is this like, I thought this was like a him kind of ghost kind of record. And I was like, there's a bit in the opening verse when he just says, there's a bit of a pause and he ends a line with, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that was unnecessary and irritating. Um, but then the chorus kicked in, and I was like, this is really good. And then there was a fill, and there was another chorus, and I was like, I really like what the drummer's doing, and I really like this riff. And then Mama Likes the Door Closed kicked in, and I was like, oh, this sort of sounds like Megadeth met Queens of the Stone Age in a bar. And then then I start liking his voice because I'm like, it kind of reminds me of Dead Kennedys and like early, like hard punk. And I like the tempo changes. And then Angel of the Night kicks in, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh, they have nice clean. And then I read the liner notes. I'm like, oh, the guy from the Cult produced this. No surprises whatsoever. And then I'm like in. at that point. So then I'm like, Suicide Today. Oh, and by the way, and if you know the opening chords on Sunshine, the down, down,
Yeah, which I
down,
loved. I
down,
thought that Slacker vibe was so sick.
Free Falling by Tom Petty.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's really sick. Suicide Today. Did you pick up Blue Oyster Cult? Do you pick up a Blue Oyster Cult vibe?
100%,
Yeah,
100%.
I love that on Suicide Today. Massive Blue Oyster Cult vibe. I
And
love
and
that.
then and then I'm just listening to the rest of it, and I'm listening to Sunshine. I'm like, this feels like an 80s throwback. And then the vocals then feel like do you remember those? You remember you saw if you watch Top of the Pops with your parents, like I used to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
occasionally, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you remember those old school, like original 80s shoegaze bands that used to have like pale face makeup and black slicked
Yeah.
hair, and there'd always be a guy in the synth, and they'd all sort of look miserable and stuff, like they all just listen to crap work all the time. Like that's what some of this kind of sounded like that, like Blue Monday, that kind of stuff, like that late 80s Joy Division, monotone kind of rock music. And I really like that as a throwback. There was a bit in the song Fame as well, that 7/3/5 power chord Iron Maiden thing with the little lead that follows over. I really enjoyed that. The guitarist here, is just absurd. And when I was like 19, this would have been the guitar sound of the band I wanted to be in, like the clean mix with the lead over the top, mixing in rock stuff with this like introspective stylings on the chorus. I don't think lyrically it's particularly great. There were some moments I listened to it and cringed a little bit. But I think overall the songs are so good that I don't think it matters at all. And there's so much here. Like Time Goes On, just beautiful. Cold World, really nice. I Am the Light is a really good song. I agree with you. There's some things that I could get rid of. There doesn't need to be 16 songs on this
Yeah,
record. There should be
six
12 with
16's a
four.
stretch.
Give it 12, wait a year, release the four as a bonus track. And those four in no particular order are um Flatline, Reggae, maybe Hoops, but I quite like the ending of Hoops. Um, and then I'm open to sort of any of the other albums, any of the tracks on this album, sorry. But overall, this is honestly terrific. And I was texting Jack about it yesterday because I was like, we started a band when we were like 20, just messing around. And I was like putting the guitar through clean, and this is exactly how I wanted it to sound. I just didn't
Sick.
know that I wanted it to sound like this. And then I heard this, I was like, that's what I've been looking for sort of 14 years. And it's really, really enjoyable. But this is a really, really good album. Really, really good album.
I've never done this before, but I made a note as I was listening to the record, trying to predict one of your notes. Because I
Okay.
thought, I reckon I can predict one of the things Sam's going to say here. So on
Okay.
Angel of the Night, when I was first listening to it, I've literally written this note. A note I think Sam would have written. Is this what Ghost would sound like if they were good? Have you written that note?
Oh, this was the first thing I wrote of the whole, not an Angel of the Night, but the whole album. It's like a better ghost is on
Oh my
Butterfly.
God, I'm so buzzing with myself. I knew,
So
I
fair
knew.
play. I also thought, and I might have said this a couple of times, imagine if this was Teenage Wrist.
Oh, don't. That's heartbreaking. Teenage Wrist would
Wouldn't
sound amazing in this gothic sound.
Wouldn't or did I sound like a better version of Creeper, and then I decided to call him Stalker or Prowler, whatever more aggressive version of Creeper is.
Yeah.
Um, because like that, it's kind of all those emblems of those other bands sort of blended together. But through the heart of this is a rock record and actually at times a punk album.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the clean sort of over the top of it. There's enough here, enough versatility that a lot of people would enjoy this. I think I could play this my old man, and I think he'd really enjoy this. But I think he'd just
Yeah. Yeah.
spend an hour and a half telling me where all the albums that they've ripped off comes from. But I think overall though, this is just such a good, well recorded, beautifully put together album. And man, I've got to admit my biases here. I love clean guitar.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. This is so
I
you,
love
this album.
echoey minor chord clean guitar, and I love piercing, turn the treble on solos that just cut through the mix without it being sort of like massively shreddy, and it's like sort of melodic and stuff. There was a point in it, and I think I actually wrote it down. Um, I can't remember what song it's on. Oh, here we go. Fame. There was a chorus and then the solo lead was the chorus melody. And I was like, I haven't heard bands do that for like 15 years. Remember when bands would write solos, but the solo, like Stacey's mom, would be the
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
just the lead of the chorus. Like I was just like unreal. I was like, this is a welcome throwback here. We're getting to the point now where like 80s and 90s is becoming like a nostalgia thing. We're kind of coming
yeah,
back full
yeah,
circle, which is
yeah, yeah.
quite nice. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. This has got real heart and feel, and there's moments of this that are just really interesting. You know, like the Mama Likes the Door Closed with the stabbing on the verses and stuff. When he does it with the
Yeah,
crash at
yeah.
first and he does the hi-hat. There's like a theatrical element to this band. There's a moment in the song where I can't remember what I hear what sounds like a kazoo. And it's like this kind of like whirling noise in between the riffs and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is happening on this? But overall, I think this is just terrific. I think the guitar sounds tremendous. I think the songs are well written. There's so much versatility. I think it is a little too long. I do think it's a little too long. You could cut 4 tracks out of this and it would make any difference at all. But overall, it's a tremendous album, and just from a surprise standpoint, just absolutely knocked my socks off. I thought you dislike it, and I'd have to talk you around.
No, I love this. This is up there with one of the best albums I've heard this year. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, it's.
This is
I'm really
excellent.
glad. Like I like this band, like Capital L. I will listen to it for myself in the future. If these tour, we can go. Like,
Yes, they're touring in I believe February of 2025.
great, we'll go. That sounds good to me. But like this is I can't believe a band is making songs that sound like this in 2024 because everything about this, it's like a polished version of a classic formula. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like I don't know, like I don't know how to describe it. It's just like they've brought it back out of like 1987, but they've buffed around all the edges, or like
Yeah.
like PlayStation bringing out the new one with the old PS cover on it and all that type of stuff. But I just thoroughly enjoyed this. It's ambient and it's well written and it's atmospheric and it's really beautiful and ethereal on one sense, but also it's got like a hard hitting punk rock sort of undercurrent that sort of keeps it grounded. It's like 3 or 4 different genres at once, and I like all of them. I really like this. I really like this. I will say though, and I'm going to say it now, but if we have a podcast in 3 years, this sounds like the kind of band that I'm going to hate the next album.
What does that mean? What does
Right,
that
I'll
mean?
explain. Because the margin for error on doing this really well is so thin. Because if you get this just a little wrong, right? If you mess up the choruses or the vocals sound a bit generic or cheesy, or the riffs aren't very good, or something is off, this immediately sounds tin in like 10 minutes. Like,
Fair, you know what? Yeah, I get that, and like
you
that's why I
understand though?
opened up
Like,
with
imagine if this was
the
10%
vocal
worse, you'd
question.
hate this.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I opened up with the vocal question for you because I wanted to set the store. Because I thought, if you're off on the vocals, this is going to be an album that you despise. Luckily, like you're not, and I think the vocals are excellent. But if you're not into the vocals, this is going to be a long hour.
Yeah, so I'm already worried about album two from following this. Like, I don't know if this is their debut, by the way. We'll talk about
No,
that
it's
in a moment.
the third record.
Okay. Oh, then this feels that maybe this is a breakthrough for them and I need to sort of go retrospective. Maybe I'll hate the other two. But I really like this. This particular blend of what they're doing really works for me. And I think this
Yeah,
is just a tremendous album. And I think you could recommend it to a lot of people who have a
yeah,
lot of interests. Like our favorite bands are usually typically pretty heavy, and we both really like this. I've got
yeah.
a good friend of mine whose favorite band is like Sam Fender and Oasis, and he likes that kind of clean
Maybe.
over indie, and I think there's a chance, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think our mutual friend Mr. Winfield would enjoy this.
No, he would despise every moment of being alive while this is playing, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, but our boy Jack likes it. So I
Yeah,
think
I
we're
thought
three.
he would.
I think we're 3 or 5 on the only people in my life that I care about. So like that's pretty good going.
Couple of things from me before we round off. It's produced by Tom Dalgetty, who produced Ghost. So I think that's where those connect. You can definitely hear those connections
Yes, yes, you
throughout
can.
the record. And there's something that so my understanding is that Gabriel Franco he's the songwriter of the band. So the previous two albums, literally, he has controlled every single moment. But in on this record, he has given a bit more freedom to the guitarist Sebastian, the bassist Brandon, and the drummer Colin. But just as a vocalist, Gabriel, he's dripping with vocal charisma. Like the first time I heard him sing, I thought, do you know what? Is this how people felt when they first heard Billy Idol? Because he's so charismatic and he's got such a unique sound to his voice. It's so deep but kind of melodious as well. It's so unusual. And there's a moment in Fame where he stands out so unbelievably. Oh, and also on Fame, there's like a quick mention for the drum roll that goes into the solo. That's unbelievable. That bit is absolutely amazing. I thought, God, Sam's gonna absolutely adore this bit.
Correct. I
Sunshine's
did.
got this amazing like 90s slacker vibe, but it's got this unbelievable power to it. So this undeniable, irresistible, uplifting joy to the chorus. So with Sunshine's probably the only song on the album that's got this like real kind of positive uplift to it, despite being surrounded by this kind of melancholic tone. This is just such a great rock record. You mentioned Suicide Today as well, and I started with the whole Blue Oyster Cult vibe. But there's a riff passage that starts Suicide Today that is honestly, it's got Don't Fear the Reaper written all over it. And you mentioned like your dad would probably identify which bands they've taken influence from. But man, it works so well. There's an unbelievable flow to the chorus. There's guitarist stabs as he does the "Don't Have to Be Suicidal" line. Like, I just adore everything about Suicide Today. The album is just a litany of great goth rock, post rock, alternative rock songs, and I was absolutely stunned by how much I love this album. I rolled the dice on it because I'd seen them mentioned on Twitter, and it turns out like this is one of the
Shout
best
to
albums
you.
I've heard this year. Yeah,
Shout
you
to
know
you.
what? One of the rare shouts that I deserve. The title track, the title track, just to close off. Literally every great component of contemporary and 80s rock sits within the song. The chorus is massive, the drums are technical, it's a delicious solo, the guitar tone is just the embodiment of a chef's kiss. Like it is the guitar tone is stunning on this
Perfect, yeah.
album. Like
Perfect, yeah.
absolute shout out to Tom, the producer. Like this has been produced to perfection. This has. Honestly, phenomenal production job. I'm going to go back and listen to the previous two records. I want to know what they're saying. But they've absolutely captured a fan in me. I think this album's awesome. Like, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I completely agree. This has blown me away, took me by surprise, and like I agree with you, a contender for album of the year. Just truly excellent. Really, really enjoyed it against most of my instincts.
Enjoyed it against most of my things. What sentence when the podcast on? That is where we're going to leave it for this episode of 45 Minutes of Noise. We have gone over time, for goodness sake. Only by 10 minutes, but still. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back with reviews on Blood Incantation and Undeath. So nice death metal episode coming up for you there, as well as any other news that we stumble across. Again, the best way to support us is by liking/subscribing, depending on whichever podcast service you use. And please subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us at Noise Podcast Network on Twitter as well. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time. Keep it metal and keep it 45 minutes of noise. We'll see you later. Bye.